You're ugly, you're disgusting, I'm gonna kill you, give me $200.
Relay defense. Everybody remembers this mode, right? You know, the most popular and amazing mode that everybody loved and there were totally no problems ever. Yeah, that mode, the one that nobody really thinks about because, well, it doesn't exist. Relay defense was another attempt at getting some sort of variance in FEH, quote-unquote, for as much as there is, that aren't just the main modes, including Aether Raids and Summoner Duels, or whatever the case may be. Although Summoner Duels wasn't there back then, still, they were trying to come up with new ideas, and one of the ideas they came up with was an alternative to Rival Domains, which, for those who aren't aware, is basically the mode where you take up to 10 turns to capture a bunch of forts, you get some rewards, and it refreshes every week. They thought that, what if we did it in reverse? And in fairness, it wasn't exactly the worst idea. You could continually rehash the same stuff with minimal resources and basically have more quote-unquote content for the players. And that's how it basically worked. You had 8 turns to basically defend the fort, but you had to use 4 teams. And every 2 turns, it would swap out each team for whatever one you already had. So if you already had a strategy in place, then it didn't matter, you do it again. Which, whatever. And there really wasn't much else to the mode. It was basically just the same thing but reverse. You had the same amount of maps, you had the same amount of tiles, you had the fortress which had the same amount of levels or HP, and you basically had to defend it from the AI, and that was literally how it went. And again, this wasn't a bad idea on paper. If anything, it was relatively genius because you could take what mode you were already used to, swap it around a bit, and you basically had a brand new game mode. However, in typical IS fashion, they had to mess up somewhere along the line. And where did they mess up? Well, let's just say the first time didn't go too smoothly. Mainly because I don't believe they playtested it. Why do I say that? Well, because of the difficulty scaling. Now, difficulty scaling isn't anything new when it comes to FEH. You know, you have your Infernals, your Abyssals, your Lunatics, whatever the case may be. But usually they playtest it in some fashion. Here, however, I don't believe they playtested it in the slightest. So initially you start out, they're not even max 40, they're 3 stars, they have like 1 weapon and pivot. And that's whatever, it's the lowest difficulty, it's not too bad. And you keep going up and up, they get a bit more HP, they maybe learn a few skills along the way, they still get pivot, they maybe eventually get their full weapon and maybe a full kit. However, where it gets really bad is the cumulative amount of HP they keep granting the allies. As every time you rank up, they keep increasing the amount of stats these units get. So, on the highest difficulty on Abyssal 2, every enemy unit gets a bonus HP stat of 50 and Spectrum 12, meaning that they're basically unkillable. Especially when it came to back then, that's a lot. And we didn't even have the amount of power creep that we do now. So imagine that being difficult now. Think of it how it was back then, before we had all these like absurd effects in the game. Yeah, it was really, really difficult. We even had guides. A lot of the guides even included just body blocking rather than attacking, which was hilarious because the only way it seemed beatable was through any sort of cheese. Which, you know what? If that's how it worked, great. But I don't think that's what they were intending to do. Now, granted, I don't think they wanted you to kill every single unit. But at the same time, not being able to kill a single one of them is pretty absurd, especially when you have stuff like 90 HP Sanakis. If I remember correctly, somebody even posted a picture once of a 99 HP Elise, and for those who aren't aware, she has the lowest base HP in the entire game. But simply put, it was absurd. And this lasted for 2 weeks. After that, they basically removed it for a bit, and the last time they brought it back was back in October, where they significantly nerfed the amount of stats the allies are getting, thankfully, but I don't think anyone really cared for the mode after, because after that point, they basically removed it, and they haven't brought it back since. And why is that? Well, it's because it's on hiatus for the time being, since the 2.11 update, which was almost 4 years ago. But it might come back, right? I don't know. But that only means they're just fine-tuning the mode, because eventually it's going to come back. I'm sure of it. If you can't tell, the confidence is brimming. Simply put, they canned it. I don't think they're really ever going to bring it back. And to be honest, I think they should. Compared to a lot of other modes that we have in the game now, it was definitely a lot more engaging. However, they definitely dropped the ball initially because, yeah, 50 HP with a bunch of stats was a bit absurd. And usually if you could think of a strat, eventually you'd have to swap out your teams because after every 2 turns you'd have to use your next brigade team, which meant it was a bit more difficult in just keeping up the setup. However, if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, well, you just missed out on some rewards that week. In any case, if I had to guess why they just didn't keep the mode around, it's probably because people weren't playing it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the goals when it comes to these types of games is the active engagement. So if they weren't getting a lot of engagement from the mode, comparatively to maybe something like Rival Domains, then they would want to swap it out. Even stuff that just requires you pressing one single button probably has a bit more engagement because you're just going into the mode and pressing a couple things and going out, whereas people may not even be touching the relay defense mode, which probably told them they shouldn't bring it back. And to be honest, that's kind of a shame. The mode was definitely butchered at the beginning, but I do think it was a bit more engaging than a lot of the other stuff that we have nowadays. Granted, we still have stuff like Aether Raids and Summoner Duels, which is its own can of worms, but compared to a lot of other side modes, it was definitely one of the more engaging ones, quote-unquote, mainly because you actually had to think and do stuff. Still, at the very least, we do have better game modes, right? You know, we got Tap Battle. Oh, wait, that's not really around anymore. They kind of put that on hiatus too, because I guess people weren't playing it or they ran out of songs. Well, okay. But we do have Arena Assault, but it's only available every other week. And if you don't want to play Summoner Duels R or Summoner Duels S, well, you have one less thing to play each week. Wait a minute, you don't like Summoner Duels? How about Summoner Duels with an R? Or Summoner Duels with an S? No? You just want to play Arena Assault? Too bad. Well, I guess you could always play Training Tower. What's that? You just use FEH Pass to just get all the rewards? Alright. What else do we have on the back burner that we just never bring up? Pawn to Loki! You guys like that mode, right? Oh, you used to? What happened? Is it because you have to fight player characters now? What else? There's Lost Lore if you like that. What do you mean you want to do more than just push a button? You know what? I have the solution right here. It's the best mode ever conceived. It has just the right amount of engagement for everything you're looking for. So you know what? May I present Frontline Phalanx? You know, I'm curious, did you guys actually like Relay Defense? I think it could potentially come back, but I don't know if it's really conceivable or we've just gone too far into this hole of just modes that require one button press to win. But yeah, FEH game modes, they sure are great.